30 minutes. Going to be moderated by Adam Newhouse, who's an independent producer. He has a project here actually at the New Frontier section of Sundance. It's a video game called 1979 Revolution. And he'll be interviewing our panelists. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome everyone to the stage. And we'll get started. And thank you very much to our sponsors who've given us some in-kind donations. Microsoft, Freixenet, Cava, Champagne. And afterwards, we're going to have a little interactive lounge where you guys can play with WriterDuet. It's the first real-time collaborative screenwriting software. It's like Google Docs for screenwriting. And you guys can play around. Guy Goldstein, the founder and sole creator of WriterDuet, is actually with us today. Guy, where are you? There he is, with the big W t-shirt, WriterDuet. So you guys can ask him any questions about the software if you want to play with it. I'm assuming a lot of you have an interest in screenwriting or are screenwriters since you're here. Yeah, without further ado, let's get started. Adam, take it away.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Thank you for Screencraft and WriterDuet. Round of applause. Yes, we haven't earned it yet, but thank you. We will. So let me get some quick bios and then we'll get started. Before I end here, we have Joanne Wiles. Joanne is a literary and talent agent and partner at ICM. Her clients include Sundance favorites such as the Duplass brothers, the Zellner brothers, Sean Baker, who's here, John Singleton, and Wentworth Miller, among many more. Joanne graduated from Wharton as an undergrad, worked as an investment banker, and then went from that to being a personal assistant to Harvey Weinstein. So I've worked under quite challenging circumstances. So thank you for being here. We have Chris Burgosh. Chris collaborated on all the IFC and Fox incarnations of Greg the Bunny, which is a cult hit. Anybody haven't seen that for IFC? And MTV's Warren the Eighth, also contributing songs to the rock opera, which closed that series. He's a co-writer and associate producer of Starlet, which is a Robert Altman Spirit Award winner, as well as a co-producer on Dealing, a 2013 feature. And here, he's at Sundance with Tangerine, which is a writer. There you go. Next to him is co-writing partner Sean Baker, who also was the writer-director of Takeout and Prince of Broadway, both of which were nominated for Cassavetes Independent Spirit Awards, and Starlet, which was Cassavetes and recipient of the Robert Altman Award. Also part of the Greg the Bunny and Warren the 18 and Tangerine, they co-wrote that. I'm doing okay. Okay, and we have Mr. Ryan Mitz here. Ryan is the screenwriter for Bloodsucking Bastards, which was the opening night premiere for Slamdance this year. And I have the pleasure of reading this log line, which is pretty awesome. When an office worker at a soul-crushing company loses his coveted promotion to his longtime nemesis, he begins to fear for more than his job, as strange disappearances and bizarre deaths suggest the office is turning into a haven for the undead. That is a good log line. So that's a Sundance, getting a lot of buzz. Hope you guys can check it out. And right to my right here, as I switch over, is Mr. Christopher Ford. And excuse me one second, I'll get it. Chris went to NYU Film School. He wrote the 2012 Sundance Award winner Robot and Frank, which is amazing, and the screenplay Clown, produced by Eli Roth. Christopher has a graphic novel series called Stickman Odyssey. He lives with his wife in the hamlet of Brooklyn. And he's got a film here called Cop Car, which he's the writer of. So that is our panel. Very, very distinguished guy. So one of the things we wanted to talk about today, especially because WriterDuet is a part of this panel as well, is talking about the collaborative process of writing. So I'd like to start with Chris and Sean. If you guys could talk about what your personal process is for working together on a single screenplay.
It's really important to find the right person to collaborate with. I'm sorry, we both have collaborated with a lot of people, and I think opposites attract. I think you have to be coming from two different sensibilities, and they merge somewhere in the middle. And it's okay to fight. It's okay to have those disagreements. We have them all the time. But then you figure out, well, why don't we like what I'm putting down on the page? Why isn't what he is putting down working for me? And then something amazing comes out of that explosion. And we can't do that with just anybody. So it's really important to find someone that you're able to have that relationship with, and someone not get offended that you don't like to align with it.
Tell me a little about, in terms of Tangerine, first give a quick log line, but then also I'd love to know a moment in the screenwriting process where everything either came together or was a major obstacle. Some little personal story would be great.
Okay, great. Tangerine is a look at the lives. It's a wow, good. It takes place on Christmas Eve. It's a wild ride that focuses on two stories of infidelity converging on the corner of Santa Monica and Highland in Los Angeles. And the two lead characters are transgender sex workers. And it's their relationship and their struggles in one night. So yeah, it started off very, very briefly. It's one of these films that required, it started off as a social realist sort of movie, and so we wanted to explore this neighborhood. So we spent about 6 months doing research by actually working our way in and befriending people and finding collaborators. The two being who became the leads of the film, Maya Taylor and Kitana Kiki Rodriguez. And it was actually, to jump right to the chase, it was Kitana, after we explored many different stories and options, Kitana brought the story of the woman scorned to us. And we thought it was about a woman who's finds out after she gets out of jail that she's been cheated on by her boyfriend, and she's trying to find the woman to drag this woman back to her boyfriend for a confrontation. And we just thought this was extremely dramatic. We loved it because we realized that it would take our characters on a journey. We'd be able to spend time with them. And to tell you the truth, this is where I love collaborating. I love working with Chris because I just thought that it was going to be one little vignette. I thought it was going to be like a tiny one story of many. And then one day I called Chris. I'm like, what do we do here? And he's like, well, why don't we just make it about the tracking down of this woman, So it was really Chris's idea of like focusing on that one element. Well, thank you for your credit. I don't want to bore you guys, but the Starlet, our last film that we collaborated on, was originally a much more sort of simple story of a girl just searching through the San Fernando Valley during one afternoon searching for her dog. And then Starlet sort of evolved into something else out of that idea. And I don't think the concept of just one day, a character searching for something, a classic A to B type script ever left our systems. So I think this movie sort of came from that leftover vision.
So I want to jump to you, Joanne. So clearly that's a story that's a very interesting story. And looking at your roster of folks, it seems like you attract a lot of very interesting storytellers. So maybe tell us a little bit about the types of things you're attracted to when you're reading something and how you like to transition writers into Hollywood and what they're working on.
Just for me, someone has to have a really unique voice, and it can be incredibly left of center. Nothing you think a studio person would ever want to read, or a producer that's like accepting an Academy Award, in March. I'm looking for unique, smart, interesting voices, deep characters, something I haven't seen before. And that really gets me passionate. The standard studio, derivative, franchise, been done before, those kind of movies, or writers that write those movies, that's not what makes me excited to go home from work after working 12 hours, read a script, and we try really hard to get it made. So for me, it's all about the voice and being unique.
So clearly there is obviously franchises, and that's dominating a lot of the box office, but where do you stand on seeing where indie film is right now? I mean, I know we had a lot of films submitted to Sundance. Do you think there's a healthy amount of unique perspectives coming through your
I think Sundance does it really well. And I was not saying anything negative about those studio movies. I mean, there are plenty of agents that really did that, and that's great for the business and great for those writers. That's not what makes me excited and want to work so hard for the people I work with. And I just think anything can go. Any fabulous story with great characters. And what was your question again?
I mean, just
I'm like literally like.
No, it's about the trends and the state of the
I don't
industry.
see trends. I mean, I don't think it's like, I mean, in the studio world, yeah, big books, YA novels, franchise properties, tentpole movies, they always say, movies that are being remade from older movies that worked really well when they were made originally, they want to remake again. Anything that has box office built in based on a title or a logline. That happens a lot. I don't think at Sundance, that's what we do. And I think writing a great story that really works. So trends, yeah.
Yeah, and so I guess speaking of interesting stories with interesting storylines. Tell us a little bit about your film and how the idea came and what the writing process was actually.
Okay, so just to kind of piggyback on what Jan was saying, is that people, writers have a tendency to try and look at what's trendy, and things are trendy all the way up until someone does a bad version of that, and then it's not trendy anymore. What's trendy is always going to be good characters, good stories. So, for me, my writing process, I knew I wanted to write a comedy, and I love genre blending, and so Bloodsucking Bastards is definitely more of a comedy movie that just happens to be set in a horror film. And that's kind of how I started the process of writing it. And then it was more about, what was going to be interesting, and what was going to be compelling for the characters to do. And as far as me in the comedy world, I am a very big adherent of just write jokes like all the time. Fill the script up with jokes. If it's not a joke, you better be moving the story forward. And but otherwise, just making people laugh.
So piggybacking on that, tell us a little about, I'm interested to hear kind of everybody's opinion on this, the feedback process. Who's the first person you send it to for notes? How do you tend to, take those notes in, and what's that process like for you?
Right, okay, so the first person who I sent Bloodsucking Bastards to for notes is my current writing partner now. And so that's kind of how I got the job. He gave me some really good notes, but taking notes is definitely a learned skill. It's something that initially, when I wrote the script, it was my baby, and I didn't want anybody to touch it and change it. And the hardest part for me was to learn that every single note you get, no matter how ridiculous it may sound or how asinine it may seem, there's a reason you're getting that note, and it's part of your job as a writer to dig into the kernel of that note and find what made somebody give that note to you. And it may not be something that you act on, but if you're just dismissing notes out of hand, you're doing yourself a disservice.
And Christopher, what about you when it comes to feedback and that process?
Yeah, I have a writing partner I work with sometimes, and so it's kind of the system is you have like constant notes going back and forth, and then I have a group of friends that I went to film school with, and they're always the first person to bounce stuff off of, just because we get where each other are coming from. Because yeah, I totally agree with you that any note from anyone, you disagree, but you're like, oh, I see like a way to address where they're coming from. But then it's also great to get notes where it's really from a supportive place where they know what you're trying to do, they know what kind of things you write, and their notes are there kind of tailored fit for you.
I also think just in terms of notes, you take all these notes in, but it's got to feel right for you. So you can't just take every single note you get from someone you think is important in the process and just incorporate it into your script, because then it becomes a cut and paste job, and that voice, that through line, is no longer there, and then the work doesn't work. So you have to be smart about the notes, thoughtful about the notes, and reject what doesn't work because it's your piece of material. To me.
And Christopher, just another thing, you had a film at Sundance that did incredibly well about Frank. What was it like post that, leading into that last couple of years, and what surprised you about having that success and then where it went from there?
Okay, yeah, so that movie with Robot and Frank, take care of him. And so the surprise me was yeah, so was a horror movie, or like be able to fit into kind of a mode that can keep the career going, but I didn't do that at all, so I guess it's okay too. Yeah, yeah, and the time, it was a huge help. Like I have a career as a writer now because of that movie. But the process is still the same. It's just I just chase, if an idea comes or through a collaborator, I just chase the idea. I don't try to think of someone else would want or what would be good. I just follow the instincts of what would be a good story on the inside.
Cool. Sean, I wanted to ask you, you obviously have written a bunch of stuff, you've also directed. Talk about how you decide that you're going to direct something versus just writing it, and how you kind of put together a team for the project.
Well, it's I've directed 5 features, and the teams have changed over the course of the 5. But you know, I feel it's getting stronger every time. And, you know, you have to surround yourself by with the right people. But to get back to your other question about like the notes, really quick. This works its way into the directing thing. I actually go to my actors for a lot of notes. And because I, you know, as we're going into production, I know that's scary and probably can never work in the studio system, but independents allow for this. And so I cast incredibly smart, witty people who are incredible writers in their own way, because for example, Dree Hemingway, she was in Starlight. You know, she brought a lot to the table. We collaborated a lot with her on a lot of the dialogue, on her, and so she, not that she actually changed the course of the script, but there were many notes from my actors. And Karan Harabulian, who I've worked with in all of my films, he brought this whole Armenian subplot. He didn't bring it. We said, let's work on this together, and he helped me out. He helped us out tremendously because he is Armenian, and he comes from that world, and he knows it better than us. So just to answer that, yeah.
Yeah, I don't jump in. I think it's so true, and that's something I learned because I hadn't worked with like really high caliber actors before, and then when I did, it was so shocking. Like, oh my God, thank you so much, because they're really smart, they're clearly super talented, and they're seeing the script so much from the character's perspective, which is something that maybe people would, as a joke about actors, like that, you know, they only read their lines or something, but it's so helpful, because you're like talking to the character and seeing, you know, where there's hitches, where it's not actually,
They know the character better than anybody else.
The wonderful thing about working with Sean Baker is that we're always constantly revising. But no, it's constantly. It's a great thing. You don't have to use what they suggest, but they might bring you.
It's very true. Ryan, talk about from the process, from when it was done to getting it made. What was that like? And, you know, who was the first person to say, "Oh my God, we want to make this and do this"?
Okay, so it was a lengthy process, as it normally is for a first-time writer.
How long?
A few years, about 3.5 years. I actually got it to a friend of mine who was an intern at the production company, and they liked it, and they optioned it, and then they couldn't get anything done with it. And then another production company came on, casting director, still couldn't get anything done. And what finally made it kind of in Dollhouse, he came on board and just loved the project, and that's kind of what allowed us to start putting people together. From there, we were able to get Pedro Pascal, who was the Red Viper on Game of Thrones this last year. And so, you know, with that kind of caliber on an indie movie, it really helped push it forward. And that's kind of, you know, what made it all kind of click eventually.
Joanne, when you read something that one of your clients sends you and you're really excited about it, what's the process in terms of packaging it up with the right team? You know, whether it's a first-time writer who needs a production company, what are the different things you take into account when you're trying to help them put that together?
Just for a writer, not a writer-director.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say a great producer who gets along with you. You have to meet a bunch of them because it's a really important relationship, because they have to protect you through the process, and it can be long, as they spoke of. So you should meet a bunch of great producers that make sense in the world of what the screenplay is about. And once you find that person that has a commonality, and it's about either finding a director, if the writer doesn't want to direct, or transition the writer into directing, and then it's about casting. But I would say the first piece is really a strong producer. And it doesn't have to be a huge namey producer. It just has to be somebody that has relationships and has a commonality with the view of the movie.
I'm just interested, how many writers do you have kind of among the crowd? Raise your hand. There you go. We're at a screenwriting panel, so it's not surprising. But what I want to know then is, so for people, who are not in the industry, and I know because I came into this industry without any connections, you had to form those relationships. What are some things that writers can do to start that process of getting those relationships and getting their stuff read by the people who can help push it forward? Anybody can speak to it.
I think that's really, really smart. As you were saying, I was thinking back on when I had projects that worked out, and it was completely because of a relationship with a producer, like not a huge name, just someone who was a friend. We got each other, and they had relationships, and it started snowballing from there. So I would say, like, find that person, and that person. Work really hard, be a genius, but finding that person isn't about like, oh, there's some like high producer, if only I connect to them. It's like, these are your peers, like you all can rise together. It's not about like some shot into the dark. It's like, just, the producer's looking for a script, like you all need each other.
And sometimes like a producer that wasn't on the map 2 years ago is now on the map with a big movie. It happens like that. And if you look at this award season of like Nightcrawler or Boyhood, unique voices, following their own vision, you can be left of center of the studio system and still make it critically in Hollywood large. So to me, it's find who believes in you, write what you love and what you know, don't conform to what others are telling you to do, and just follow your soul and your heart. And then if you have the talent, it'll work.
The last word. That's it. I think I'd like to open it up to questions now, because I think we have a lot of people interested. So feel free to raise your hand. We'll also continue the conversation, but if anybody has a question they want to ask. Yes.
I mean, I think in terms of finding an agent, there's so many agents that really are effective and do that thing. But what you and I had talked about before this started was, I think for beginning young writers, finding a young rep, someone who needs, I was there 20 years ago, who needs to build their business, that doesn't have a lot of clients, that is servicing other people's agendas at their agency or management companies, but wants to find their couple of diamonds in the rough that they can create, what I was able to do with some of the clients I work with 10, 15 years later. Find those young folks that are hungry and aggressive, that see your talent. And franchise, not franchise, it doesn't matter.
In this day and age, you can find those people. You can really look online and try to figure out who just got promoted or who's doing that. That information is out there. But I hear a lot of people say, well, I don't even know how to get in front of them. I'm like, just start with Google, really.
Or like I had a lot of success just like little screen thingies like this, like Channel 101 in LA or in
What's Channel 101?
It's like a monthly short, like mini TV show festival thing, and just like a kind of game of filmmaking for fun. And I just always did it for fun, and then years later, I learned like there are all these agents and managers there that are looking for stuff that interests them. Like they're out there.
I always tell writers, if you're writing something, you can't just sit behind your computer. Your process is not over when you finish the script. And this day and age, especially with all the self-distribution, you're seeing people play as many roles as possible. You need to be out there advocating it, or being in a place where you can meet other filmmakers or producers and talking about your project. It's not enough to sit behind and send emails out into the ether and just hope that somebody's gonna say, you, that screenplay. It just doesn't happen that way. More questions? Yes, thank you. Good question. How'd you guys meet?
Well, we were friends from Tisch, NYU. Right, and I think, that's personally, I think that's the most valuable thing about school. It's film school. It's who you meet, because you're going to be working with those people. Probably, if you meet the right people, you'll be working with them down the line. And we're, I don't want to tell you how many years out from what year we are, but we've been working together for a while. And the guys I created Greg the Bunny with, Spencer Chinoy and Dan Milano, we met in school. And it's so I think that's how I did it.
Yeah, and also, back then, we were younger, and like I was saying before, you have to learn how you can. It's no different than any other relationship that you would have with a girlfriend or whatever. Just learning how to navigate through the disagreements in a healthy way instead of an unhealthy way.
Yeah, I met my writing partner in high school, actually, and he actually had to work for the job because I was a solo writer for a while, and but I kept sending him scripts, and he would give me good notes and stuff, and eventually, I really like the immediate feedback. That's one of the things I love most about working with somebody, is that as you're writing, you can have somebody over your shoulder being like, no, that's crap. They'll put that in there, and so or they're laughing, which is even better, and that's when I really start feeling creative. I don't like just kind of like pacing around. That's what I do. My wife hates. I pace around the house if I'm writing. But when I'm working with a partner, we can like talk things out. We can generate ideas that way.
And how were you able to work on the same script at the same time?
Yeah. So we have we use this brand new software called WriterDuet, and no, I really do use it, and I found out about it recently. And it's amazing. I've been using Final Draft for a long time, but yeah, oh man, yeah, trying to use Final Draft is just a mess. So this, I can actually, my writing partner actually lives in a different city than me, so we're not that far away, but it's so much easier if we're able to, just flip our laptops. He can see me typing in real time. I can see him, crossing stuff out in real time, and it's fantastic. And then that's just the collaboration part. There's a ton of extra features that are amazing too.
I want to add one thing about finding a writing partner. I think if you're not at school, you're out of school, there are writers everywhere. And I think one of the things you can do if you're seeking out a writing partner is put together a writer's group. So if you put together a group and you're sharing, scripts or what you're writing among each other, you can get a sense of what everyone is good at or not good at, and that could be a way to form a relationship. So I think there's no excuse. If that's something you want, you can form it, whether it's in a different city or in the same city, but the power is in your hands. Yes?
How often do you guys workshop your scripts in front of an audience or stage readings?
Personally, never. What we do, well, at least for the films, not Break the Money, but for the films, we spend time. Actually, do you know how Mike Lee does it? The filmmaker Mike Lee.
Tell us.
Well, from what I hear, he there's a lot of time with the actors that he spends actually fleshing out the script, workshopping with the actors, and that's what we do. We workshop. Like, for example, when we had a script mint, which I guess is half a script, half a treatment. It was approximately, 59 pages? 50, yeah. And so we would actually spend time and work on one scene the entire day with our actors. We would record everything, and sometimes if the lines were good enough, we would transcribe them and put them in the script. So I spend that sort of workshopping I do, not in front of an audience or for other people, but for ourselves.
What about you guys? Did you do any publics?
I did not. Yeah, in public, I don't know. No. That seems really scary.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's a good idea.
Sometimes with myself, actually, because you can't underestimate the power of just reading your script out loud. After you're writing it, so much, your brain sort of just like adjusts to it in a weird way, and you'll be surprised at how many, things you'll catch if you actually read that block to yourself.
Yeah, like I always write down like rhymes and don't realize it until I read it out loud. It's like it should not resign.
Right. Yeah.
So stupid.
And Joanne, do you ever go to readings? People host those. That's something they invite agents to.
I mean, the only readings that I've ever gone to are when like a huge filmmaker is potentially starting to cast one of their movies, and they want to have either some of the actors that they're thinking about play the role to see if they want them or they want to hear how it sounds. I've gone to those, and I've gone to readings of TV scripts like on Transparent. I did go and hear those read. I think TV is a different process. Film-wise, it's only really been in relation to casting and maybe tweaking it before production.
Great.
So.
Another question? Yes. Sorry.
When you're writing a screenplay that writers want, what methods do you use to find their inspiration?
I try to find special magical portals. I'm serious, they're out there, you know, whether it's in the corner of a Starbucks, that's fine, even though it's a cliche for us, or if it's Disneyland on Main Street, just like being stimulated by all that, you know, stuff coming there. It definitely helps, it really does. I wrote some started on Main Street.
Naps. No, but seriously, I don't know if there is such thing as writer's block. I think it's just sometimes laziness, and I just have to kick my own ass to start writing again.
Yeah, I go on Reddit a lot, and but I find a good thing, you know, sometimes watching a really good movie that has like a really good story and characters that can kind of get you back in that mode, especially when it finishes, you know, kind of all jazzed up to get back to it. That's something I use. Doesn't always work.
Yeah, I think thinking of it as a block is not helpful. I think for me, what it feels like is I'm just too scared to keep going because I feel like it's bad, and this seems, I just like, what am I going to write? Like, this doesn't make any sense. So it's all about going back and fixing stuff earlier.
So, yeah. I think we have time for 2 more questions. So we have a couple more in the crowd. Right? Yes, sir.
What about, how do you guys, do you have any tips or tricks or a process that you use to write really, truly authentic characters? So you're not just, if you're going to a movie and you're seeing these characters, you're getting all these, you're generating all these ideas of what are really other people's characters. How do you make sure you're not writing generic cliche characters and you're writing truly authentic characters to yourself?
Well, maybe I'll jump on that just a little, you know, maybe related to the writer's block thing. It's just like, sometimes you are writing a generic-ish character, you're figuring it out, and just to give yourself a pass to not freak out about that at first, and to find the character as you go. If you have like a polished final draft and you realize this character is generic, maybe something wrong with the story, I don't know. I mean, that's a hard question.
You know, that's really true. You know, I'm like everybody else. I have a pile of like 10 half-written, quarter-written screenplays, and I think my biggest problem is just, you know, you just have to get it out. You know, even if it sucks, just get the first draft done, keep moving forward to get to the end, get those 3 acts done, and then you go back to rewrite it instead of just getting hung up and not being able to get past that first draft. That was my big problem. So that's what I found to be very therapeutic. Just keep moving even if you know it sucks.
So what about working with it is based on a couple of characters or people, real world people for Tangerine, correct?
Yeah, exactly. I think that with the last couple of films I've done, I've actually been focusing on roles that I'm personally interested in and I want to explore. So for me, I don't see them as generic or anything right off the bat because I'm already just trying to, I find them fascinating. So I don't really, they don't ring generic to me in any way, just from the beginning. But yeah, what I do again is really just a research process. It's very important to the types of movies that we've been making recently, where that's how you get authenticity. You have to spend time in the world. There's no way, I don't think you can make stuff up if you haven't lived it, or at least spend a lot of time with the characters who have, or the people who have.
Ryan, have you worked a soul-crushing corporate job? Yeah.
I actually had not at that point. But for me, just I'll speak to that as far as like comedy goes, because that's where I will get that feeling of genericness. Like I'll know, I'm like, okay, I need to hit a joke here, but the only thing that's coming to mind is like the most cliche joke, and that a lot of times that's what I'll write is the cliche joke, and I just make a mental note like that's not gonna be in the final version. But if you sit there and you try to make every single line of dialogue ring absolutely true the first time, you're never gonna get anywhere, because a lot of times it takes you getting through a script to fully understand your characters. You can do a lot of character background, but until you've gone on that ride with them, you don't fully know them yet. So a lot of times it's easier just to come back and on that second pass, like, oh yeah, you never say this, so you can fix it that way.
All right, final question. Ooh, you got a great one?
Kind of piggybacking what you're saying, I love writing. I'm writing TV shows now. I'm not positive feedback. They go, this is so clear. This sizzle. I've been a self-help writer. I'm now segueing into this. But when I hear you go, I understand that process. It's awful, but it's lovely. It's masochistic. It's so wonderful. But how do you, like, if you describe something delectable and clear, now it's going to become an image, it's going to become a voice. How do you transition that idea into a specific character? How do you get that bridge? Do you just already know kind of who your characters are? Or, you know what I'm saying? How do you bridge that?
You know, I'm all I know is that for me personally, there is a moment when you get in, when you're writing out a script, you get to that moment where things become very clear. And for us, for example, we have the note card. We do the traditional note cards all over the wall, right? We have our entire wall covered. And there's that one day where it all starts to click, where you're like, oh, this should be here, this scene should be here, this person should be, and all of a sudden it just comes. But it's about, as he said, it's really just continuing to write until you get to that moment of clarity.
I mean, we all know we pour our souls into all these characters. There's got to be a little of us in all of them. You came to me with a story about working girls in Hollywood, and I've, as bad as things have gotten for me, I've never had to turn tricks myself yet. So how do I relate to a character like that? And then we figured out, like, okay, the story's going to stem from just a girl with a broken heart, and at heart it's a love story, probably not on a broken heart at one point. So it stems from a place like that.
Great. So thank you to Screencraft and WriterDuet, and to all our panelists. A round of applause, please.
And I do want to thank our online viewers for tuning in too. We've had just over 100 people tune in at different times to watch the panel. And we got a question from Twitter. Jason Lee asked if the $25 code that we're offering everyone here is for the software or for the t-shirt, and it's definitely for the software. There are some free t-shirts. I think Guy has several that he'll hand out, but if you're interested in the software, this code is valid for the next several days, and you can get the pro version of the software for $25 off. There's also a free version that's very feature-rich as well. So with that said, thank you to our panelists, and grab some champagne and feel free to ask us questions. Thank you.